guys, Dozer here bringing you another video. I know we've been getting a lot of videos out recently. Just wanted to share a gameplay video versus Bolton as Prism. This is the same yellow Prism deck list that I was using before, and it's a good example of a matchup where Bolton can pop your Phantasms quite a lot, and he can put a lot of pressure onto you, but if you hang in there, get some timely draws, and play around stuff at the right time, you can navigate the matchup. So let's get right into it. Again, this is pre-recorded, just so I'm able to talk about stuff. So this is me going second. Bolton is leading off with just normal attacks, and he's going to be just doing some early chip damage here. We have a 0 block in our hand, and Bolton has a pretty good opening hand here. We can do V into Take Flight into his Raiden, and so we're going to be taking a little bit of chip damage here, but nothing too bad. So we're just going to block out as much as we can. We don't know what he's going to be using, so we want to just make sure we're throwing as much damage in front of him as possible. Unfortunately, all of our blocking cards in the deck are attack actions essentially, so we have a really hard time at stopping his value from his hero ability, but we can use our angels and the ward to kind of get around that problem. And we always, again, want to squeeze every little bit of value out of our hand as possible, especially when going second, so totally happy to use the footsteps to block there for one. And so here's a really interesting turn. So we have library, 2 yellows, and a red herald, and normally you'd want to do the red herald into the library to finish your turn, but the problem is that Bolton has a lot of poppers generally. So while we would love to be able to play both of those things this turn, put some pressure and drop the library, it's more likely than not that we're going to get popped if that happens. And so I would rather drop the library, use the Rapture to sink some resources to get our second yellow into pitch, and arsenal our red protection so that when our opponent takes their turn, we're not risking getting totally blown out of the game by getting rid of, all of our tempo there. So in this case, our opponent doesn't seem to have had a popper. He's got Take Flight, a Soul Shield, and a Create a Steel hand, which he charges. It's coming at us for 4. We have nothing on the board to protect, so why block here, right? We have a really big hand that we can throw back at our opponent. Every time that we're able to keep our 2 yellows and throw them at our opponent, we're really happy. And so being able to only take a little bit of damage from Bolton by not blocking here is really nice for us. And so we're gonna just, again, not respect it at all. We're not gonna block. There's really no point here. We're thinking about it, of course, but at the end of the day, what's important is that we are setting up our library to be able to pressure our opponent. And so even here, right, Valiant Thrust, he didn't have a popper, but if he did, we would have been really sad. So again, taking a nice big damage turn from the Bolton here, but again, you just have to kind of believe in your own value of the library, right? So again, getting library this early is really nice. It's allowing us to take this as our pivot turn, whereas before we'd have to probably block more until we found something to pivot with. And so here we're leading with the Triumph because we have a really full hand that we can tutor our Figment of Triumph off of our Halo if our opponent tries to pop us with a 7 power attack. Herald of Triumph is not safe in this matchup unless you have some extra backup, so important to keep that in mind. At the end of the day, though, our opponent is going to be just blocking us out normally with some armor, and that's totally fine. We're happy to take that away from him. And generally here, closing the chain is not correct, but again, I hate having this thing open on Talishard. I'll probably end up closing it. I was thinking about haloing here just to get an angel into play, but I realized, okay, it's probably not worth it, because if our opponent is going to be able to, and then here this is totally fine. We're wanting to threaten our opponent with 9 power here. We can get the rest of his armor out of him if he decides to use it. But at the same time, if he pops us here, we can pitch our blue and then swing our Herald of Protection as well, so it's not that bad. And again, we don't really want to be using our Herald of, Halo of Illumination here, because we really want to save that for a time where we're going to stop a Phantasm popping us and then hit with big damage, which we could have represented here as well if our opponent tried to do that with us by using like a Command and Conquer or something to pop us. But he lets us hit, and in this case, we're going to cash in the extra HP to start catching up on the board. And so now we are still behind on the HP front, but we have a 5-card hand into our opponent's 3-card hand. So plus we have an arsenal, right? So it's a 6-card hand versus 3-card hand. And Bolton really wants bigger hands to be able to come back into the game. And so he's going to use his Take Flight here. We don't want to buff it, right? We don't want to give it necessarily some more power here. And because he could always be representing a Create a Steel hand or another attack reaction, like a Beacon of Victory or something. And so here, it's totally fine to just say, hey, we're going to use our angels as extra HP and not really worry about keeping them alive, especially because in our hand here, we've got things like Angelic Wrath, Herald of Triumph, and all that. So we're going to be able to pitch 2 yellows next turn, attack, react over whatever he does, and also throw 2 heralds. So we don't really want to be using any of our cards to block here. Definitely not. So we're giving up our Spectral Shields, that's totally fine. Opponent got some damage on us, but we are going to get to lead off with Herald of Triumph here, because we want to fish for that popper. So if he has a 7 power, this is where he would want to use it to force us to use our Halo. Now, I don't think this is a good play from the Bolton side. This is pretty telegraphed that I could get over this, so he should at least double blocked it, I think. But, you know, to each their own, and so we're going to get over this. And I'm even going to cash in my Wrath here because I'm concerned about whether or not I'm going to be able to get my value off of that on the second swing, because he might have the second popper. And so I want to just make sure this one pushes through. And here I'm just going to go ahead and grab our Figment of Erudition so that we can get a Ponder token, so that when we flip and swing, we can end up with an arsenal at the end of this turn. We're going to flip the Triumph Figment, though, because we're going to swing with it to reduce the power of our opponent's cards on their next turn. Bolton really gets hurt by this Angel swinging and using its on-banish effect, or on-attack banish effect. And so it's also going to help clear the way for my second Herald, because now he'd have to have his 8-power card to pop this, which he won't have. So we're able to finish off that way as well. And I'm just going to cash in the Ravages here because he's already getting kind of low on HP, and I want to make sure he's as close as possible so we can start threatening lethal as soon as possible. Throw our Herald into Arsenal off the Ponder token, and our opponent's coming at us with an Engulfing Light for 2 whole damage. Wow, right? So even if we block here, its base power is not going to be exceeded by its attack buffs, and so Bolton's not going to be able to give it go again with his hero power. He's going to have to use his Snapdragon Scalers to do that, and so we can actually block here with a 3 block from hand. Because we really want to preserve our Victoria, Archangel of Triumph here, because at the end of the day, she's just really good at keeping the Bolton down and not letting him get a lot of his synergy off by having those +1 breakpoints on his attacks. They'll set them all at their base power and make it really hard for him to get go again. And so even with the +1 here, we're going to be able to get rid of 1 Spectral Shield and keep our Angel alive. And so now he has to choose what he's doing. And he's actually going to play his item, the Spirit of Irina. Spirit of Irina is what allows him to use his Luminant Ascension as an instant, which is really strong and really good into us if we were using something like Arclight Sentinel. But since we're not relying on Arclight Sentinel, this card is just a good value card for him and is not necessarily as backbreaking as it would be otherwise. But here we can lead off with our Victoria to give our Triumph some headway, because again, if our opponent has 7-power blockers, then he'd be able to pop our Triumph no problem. And so being able to lead with Victoria into Herald of Triumph is going to be really powerful here. And if we don't even need to use the Wrath, then we don't have to, and that's awesome. Now he might block us, which is totally fine. But if he gives us cards from hand, then we can get over them with the Wrath anyway, flip our Angel for HP. And if not, we can pitch this to get go again and swing with another Herald and then drop our library. So we get to hit here. He doesn't want to give us the cards in his hand. He can't pop us or anything. So we can go get the Dominate Figment next. And I want to throw my next Herald at him instead of flipping and swinging, because I think that's what I do anyway. Because if you flip and swing, you're only doing 4 damage. You're not threatening extra soul. Whereas in this way with the Dominate, we're getting past his armor. It's a lot harder for him to cover this. And so we're going to push through a lot more here. In this case, I already used my Figment of Ravages, but if I hadn't, then perhaps I would have been able to have already killed him here off the tutor. So you have to be aware that sometimes if Prism brings you to 1, she can tutor that Figment of Ravages and burn you for 1. And so now I could leave my soul here and use that to keep my Ravages around for potential lethal off of 2 cards, but at the same time, the 4 HP I think is going to be really important. Because you never know what the Bolton's going to do. He might triple Lumina you out of nowhere. And so being able to say like, okay, he's attacking for 0, I don't care. He's probably got an attack react. He sure does. Courageous Steel Hand. And right now we are totally happy to get rid of our Metis Angel. And so he's going to banish to search out some cards, and he's going to try and search out something to use. And so this is actually a really good example of where I probably could have just gotten game off of the Ravages if I was able to hold 2 cards here. But as you'll see, Bolton has life gain, and so it's not really very guaranteed that that would have even been the correct play. Having the extra 4 HP here is actually going to end up mattering quite a lot. because now he's going to swing his first Raiden for 3. And we're going to say, okay, no blocks. Like, there's nothing we can do about that here. Right? It's not representing much, but then here comes the double Lumina, right? So now he gets to swing his Raiden 5 times, or 3 times for 5 each, so 15 damage here. He's going to get to heal around 2 HP per attack, so he's going to heal up to 7, most likely, assuming he doesn't miss any of his triggers, and it looks like he is just doing great on all that. And so we don't want to buff his sword, so we're just going to let him hit again, and then, okay, we'll block when we have to, but in this case, we only want to block the necessary damage here. We really want to be able to trigger our library. We really want to be able to threaten multiple things. So the fact that he's only coming in for 5 here is like, well, I could block 6 and stop him from healing 2, but then I would have kind of a bad turn. Whereas right now, if I block with just a Passing Mirage, I will live with my 2 HP, and I will have enough resources to throw at my opponent and start taxing his hand so I can keep on that front foot. And so even though he's got a bit of this HP, it's really not going to be that big of a deal, because what matters more is the tempo and the card per card trading that we're trying to do. So in this case, we only have 1 soul, so we can't like flip it Figment of Erudition and then do stuff, but we're going to lead with our Dominate Erudition because we really want to try and get that card draw. If he has the Popper, he has the Popper. There's really nothing we can do about it, because even if we led with Triumph here, our opponent would simply be able to block out our Triumph and then pop our Erudition anyway, and then that's really not going to be a big deal for him to do. And so being able to get this, if he didn't have a Popper, the Erudition first is always correct. And so he's going to come in with the Illuminate, which is kind of scary. Obviously, we need to block this at least with 1 card. Luckily, he didn't charge this turn, so we can cover it with just our blue Wartune Herald. And my hope next turn is I'm hoping that I can throw Herald of Triumph and Combat Trick over whatever he blocks with the Angelic Wrath. But at the same time, I was thinking like maybe I use Light of Soul to pitch for my flipping of my Figment of Erudition, which might give me enough soul to draw a card and then keep attacking. But if you don't hit, it's like really bad, because then you don't have enough resources to swing and hit with your opponent. Whereas if I attack with Herald of Triumph, hit the Light of Soul, I can guaranteed swing my Figment of Erudition regardless. And so that's what we're going to end up doing here. So Herald of Triumph, Light of Soul, reveal a yellow, put it in a soul. It's a Herald. Now let's trigger Prism. We can get our Figment of War to try and get our Courage token so we can buff whatever Herald we draw, hopefully. Right? And so we're attacking. Our opponent's going to pop us. Of course he is. We love it when our opponent pops us every single time. But never fear, we have Blue Wrath for a reason. So here we can pitch our blue, have enough resources to flip our Erudition because our Rapture is giving us the free flip thanks to Light of Soul. And then we're going to be able to banish and draw. And unfortunately, we didn't draw anything that's pressure here. If we drew a Herald here, we'd be really happy. But we drew a Passing Mirage and an Angelic Wrath, which are still useful, especially as blues. And so our opponent has some hard things to consider, right? He's got to get through our Angel. He's got to take care of our Passing Mirage, because if he doesn't, then we can definitely get over whatever he blocks with. And he's already used 2 Luminas, so he really doesn't have a whole lot of extra surprise gas to be playing with here. 3-card hand is also very treacherous for him because we just have a lot of options. So take Flight, right? If he wants to pitch to pay for this and then charge, it reveals that, okay, we don't have to worry about whatever you're doing, right? So he has no tricks. He has all of his damage face up this turn. He's going to do 4 into 3. And so we don't need to block this at all. Our Angel can die. We're totally happy with that. However, I decided to block because I want him to not get a free kill on the Soraya. And we still have the ability to throw Ravages with the Passing Mirage is the main idea. Because if the Ravages is blocked by 2 cards, we use the Wrath in Arsenal, it's +2, plus the 1 Arcane is lethal, right? So our opponent intelligently wipes away the Passing Mirage with his Sword Swing, and so now we could lead with our Erudition, but at the same time, it wouldn't really allow us to go into any other plays. So here I choose to throw the Ravages and hope he doesn't pop us yet again. Now, however, it wouldn't be a Bolton matchup without him popping us yet again. So what we'll find out is that, boom, he's got his 1-card block. Now, if we had something like a Yellow Reprimand here, we'd be very happy, but we do not. So in this case, our opponent, again, has 3 cards. We still have our Angel, and we have to try and play around things like attack reactions. So I play around that by having my Soul Shield at the ready here, but he doesn't end up using it, and that's totally fine. We get rid of our Angel, but that's totally cool because we're going to get to trigger our library this turn with a guaranteed 6 to a guaranteed 7. And if our opponent pops us, that's totally fine. We can throw a second Herald thanks to Boltyn costing 1 less. So Celestial Cataclysm is going to pop our Herald. We're going to say yes, pay for Footsteps. And we're going to throw our Boltyn Herald for 7. If our opponent blocks this, we can still pump over with +2. And so he really has to cover what we're doing here. Luckily for us, he's got no more poppers, he's got 2 defense reactions, and so he's going to fully cover us. However, we're going to use our blue Wrath to get over his block, hit him for 1, get that soul. We don't have a Figment to search because our last Figment is in our pitch zone, but we can flip here for the extra HP buffer to make sure that we can throw our 5-card hand at our opponent next turn and hopefully finish him off. So we're going to be using that. We did think about it for a second here just because it's like, well, maybe you don't need to use the flip, but at the same time, the HP is just super valuable, right? And so Bolt of Courage coming in, he's got no attack reactions that he can represent. Everything's face up. He's coming in for 3 damage. We're going to say, okay, that's totally fine. No worries at all. He doesn't have any go again, so great. Awesome. So we have a 5-card hand. We've got Boltyn Heralds. We have Wraths. So we're going to lead off with our weaker Herald first. Make him have to have a 7-power popper if he wants to pop us. Because if he doesn't, then we're really chilling, right? And so he's going to use a Soul Shield here. That's great for us because we can use our Angelic Wrath. He probably can't cover it a second time. And then that's 2 damage, and that is lethal. So yeah, that is a Bolton matchup. I hope that was informative. I hope that you kind of realize that even when you drop low on HP as Prism, that's really when you can start to leverage your big hands and start coming back into the game. Because if your opponent just kind of lets you hit them and get that 4 healing every turn while also dealing big damage, when you're able to also, handle their value by doing things like the Archangel of Victory or Triumph's Victoria, because you're able to slow the Bolton down and reduce the power of his attacks, you're really able to power through and leverage the value of reducing the cap of his value and making him slow down while we accelerate with things like the library, with things like our Heralds and our Wraths getting over the defenses. And you'll notice that while there were some times that we had our opponent popping us, Reprimand really wouldn't have done very much for us. And having the Wraths was much more important because when we need to get through, which could be on any turn, when we have Passing Mirage out, when we have the -1 power, when we have Triumph coming through, having the extra damage and getting over the block value is more important than trying to catch your opponent with a gotcha of a Reprimand, reducing the attack and negating a Phantasm pop. So again, hope this was informative for you. And I will just keep plugging away and trying to get more matchups out there so you guys can get an idea of what game plans you should be bringing into different heroes to try and see how they will work best for you. So again, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.